The board meeting will begin in 5 minutes.
can even just say, like, when you call the roll, that while quorum is not present, the board will meet informally to hear presentations or something like that.
I wouldn't even address it.
Ryan wants
I wouldn't even draw attention.
So people will know.
Yeah. Okay, the June 7th, 2024 State Board meeting will now come to order. Good morning and welcome to the June 7th, 2024 State Board of Education meeting. Board members, please engage your microphones before speaking and turn them off when you are finished speaking. Please note that the board may be using their cell phones and laptop computers to access the agenda and information related to this meeting. Live stream is available through the State Board of Education website. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Patsy Kojons.
Here.
Lisa Fricke.
Here.
Patty Goobles.
Here.
Jacqueline Morrison. Kirk Penner. Sherry Jones. Elizabeth Tegmeyer.
Here.
Deborah Neary. Commissioner Maher.
Here.
4 present, 4 absent.
While quorum is not established, the board will continue the board meeting on an informal basis to hear presentations until quorum is established. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Information regarding the Open Meetings Act is posted as you enter the room from the main entrance doors. The Open Meetings Act is also posted on the State Board of Education's website. NDE staff members, Bridget Stevens, Allison DeVeste, and guests will join us at the front of the room for a special presentation.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today 3 outstanding Nebraska educators. All 3 are being recognized as state finalists for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching, also known as PEMST, the nation's highest honor for teachers of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, including computer science. The National Science Foundation administers PEMST on behalf of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. The award recognizes those teachers that have both deep content knowledge of their subjects and have the ability to motivate and enable students to be successful in those areas. PEMST celebrated its 40th anniversary in October and has awarded more than 5,200 teachers in 50 states and jurisdictions for their contributions in the classroom and to the profession. Their applications are submitted now for national review. Recipients of the national award receive a certificate signed by the President of the United States. They get an all-expenses paid trip to a recognition event, a $10,000 award from the National Science Foundation, and the opportunity to build lasting partnerships with colleagues across the nation. Our first 2024 recipient, Miranda Orellano, is unable to join us today. However, I'd like to share some information that she's provided. Members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of information about myself. I just finished my 19th year of teaching in Lincoln Public Schools. During this time, I've had the opportunity to lead kindergarten, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classrooms at Lakeview, Prescott, and Riley Elementary. I am currently a 4th grade teacher at Riley. Over the years, I have had many opportunities to experience learning in new ways and share in the joy of excitement when something new is discovered or a new connection is formed. One of my favorite memories of this experience occurred on the launch of a new lesson in science. My students have been presented with a background story regarding adding a new plant to our garden. that wasn't blooming during the day, but it was blooming at night instead. I shared images and a short video with students so that they could see what was happening and how the plant had changed from day to night. My class then had some time to reflect and discuss their initial ideas of how to explain this phenomenon. Listening into the thinking and the connections that students were forming before really diving into the unit was an amazing experience. My class was thinking like scientists, drawing from previous ideas, and forming connections to what they had been presented with. Students took the lead in their learning by asking questions and forming ideas for the investigation to help make sense of the phenomenon. My lessons did not always look and sound this way. Over the years, I have had numerous educational leaders step into my life and leave me with little bits of knowledge that have pushed my learning further into dimensions where my students now take center stage and lead the discussion. There's no way I can possibly name all of the impactful members in my life, but I want to recognize a few that have shaped my teaching into what it is. I need to start by recognizing my first teachers, my mom, my dad, and my sister. Our house was an environment where learning was essential and encouraged by experience. My sister and I had countless opportunities to explore and create through play, being supported by our parents. The freedom to try something out, see what works, and reflect on the process is something I strongly believe in and strive to bring into my classroom. Students need to feel that they are a part of the learning, that they have the freedom to make choices, not that it is something that they purely just experience. My family has now grown to include my husband Nelson and our 3 children, Giselle, Ricardo, and Catalina. Becoming a wife and a parent has broadened my views of how prior experience and knowledge vastly add to a person's understanding of a situation. Providing common experiences for all students to be able to access information in an equitable manner is a top priority in my classroom. Professionally, I have had multiple leaders influence my learning, including administrators, coaches, teaching partners, parents, and students. 2 people I'm extremely grateful for are Betsy Barrett, the Science Curriculum Specialist, and Lindsay Roy, Science and Digital Learning Coordinator with Lincoln Public Schools. As the leader of science in Lincoln Public Schools, they invited me into the opportunity to join the science leadership team, which has forever changed my thinking and teaching of science. These instructional leaders introduced me to story-lined units that enable students to grapple with information and make sense of it in their own way. They led me through professional development, guided me in a writing process for curriculum, and have encouraged my development every step of the way. Lastly, I want to say thank you to the members of the board for continuing to place science education as a priority for all students. Science is a universal language that is interwoven into all other areas of education, including math and English language arts. Providing opportunities for all students to receive science education and develop the science and engineering practices fosters an environment for learners who are critical thinkers and problem solvers. Our next state finalist is Thomas McChristian.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this opportunity. So my avocation for teaching came later in life, but for me it is a profound calling that I take quite seriously, though I like to interject a healthy dose of humor into the school day to help students realize how learning in general, science in particular, is not that difficult and is transformative. My early life was a time of constant change and adventure. I was born in Panama, the country, not the small town of Nebraska. So I'm a military brat and was used to moving every 3 or 4 years to wherever my father's next duty station took him and his family in tow. When I was old enough and ran out of money for college, I joined the Army and traveled around the world during my stint. My life became more settled when I learned that long-distance relationships are difficult to nearly impossible to maintain. My wife took a job at Nebraska Wesleyan University and left me in Mississippi, where we had both been working at the time. I was working as a technical writer in an architectural firm in Mississippi, as well as being an unhappy graduate student at the University of Mississippi. We had reached the proverbial relationship fork in the road, moved to Nebraska and continue our relationship, or stay in Mississippi and end it. So the move to Nebraska wasn't that traumatic. It was the latest in a series of adventures throughout my life, and it's where I found my calling for teaching. A favorite lesson, that one I really had difficulties nailing down. And the reason, when I looked through when I was looking through activities, experiments, I thought to myself, the students are going to think this is too simple, too immature, it's beneath them, they won't like it, they'll get bored. But even gathering data on a melting ice cube or gathering data on which best dissolves a sugar cube, the students loved it, much to my surprise. And I feel that put the science in their hands. They gathered the authentic data, and then they enjoy discussing how that experiment fits into the bigger picture in their lives, the world, solar system, universe. So there are all these wonderful connections that are being made through directing discussions in the classroom after the experiments, after a demonstration. So as a teacher, I'm constantly excited and rejuvenated when I see a student's moment of illumination. To share that light bulb clicking moment is truly and profoundly a moving experience for me. Those are the moments I live for during the school day. People who have helped me along this pedagogical journey, first is Elise Mooney, my cooperating supervising teacher when I student taught in 3rd grade in Chicago. She was firm, loving, and could scare me more than any of my basic training drill sergeants when she was disciplining a student. I'm not quite sure what a student had done, but boy, she was on that student, and I just sat straight as stiff, ramrod stiff in my chair, and I was like, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. Okay. Janet Zom, who was the instructional facilitator at King Science Center in Omaha, who nudged me to become more involved with state assessments in Nebraska, starting with the NISA writing assessments a few years ago. This helped me better understand the state testing process, how tests are constructed, so that now I'm volunteering for the item writing, which I'm kind of skipping out at the moment, and we'll get back there. Item writing and bias review. So that has definitely helped me as a teacher understand the process by which these tests are accumulated, and just put the notion in my head, is this testing what we're teaching, what the students are supposed to have learned? A few other people I'd like to quickly mention. Randy Benzel, who was my colleague during my first 7 years in teaching at Omaha Public Schools. His insight and humor kept me in the teaching profession during those nascent years. The teaching profession is intense, demanding, and personal. Too frequently, as the board knows, teachers are vilified by politicians, parents, and the general public. I would like to extend my genuine thanks to Mike Hart, the superintendent of District R1, Lindy Walter, the principal of Bennett Elementary, for talking me off the ledge of quitting teaching and going to work for the railroad. Also, Burt Brown for keeping our Chromebooks working and just kind of giving me the pat on the back every now and then, saying, great job. That goes a long way. Jennifer Borg, although we've only taught for a couple years now as 5th grade partners, she's a marvelous colleague with whom I exchange ideas in the classroom management and curriculum, as well as being a sounding board during trying moments. Lastly, I reserve my thanks to my family. They are the ones who listen to my rants at the end of a challenging day, To my children who shared the wonderful, successful experiments and helped me explain the science at grade level. They helped me troubleshoot the many experiments that didn't work out the way they were supposed to. And my wife, who was fairly supportive of me spending money to bring science into the classroom for all students to put into their hands. And of course, she was always standing behind me, ready to hand me the broom, dustpan, and mop to clean up the kitchen after all the messes I made. Thank you.
And we also have Megan Mullen with us today.
I've been an educator now for 18 years. My first year of teaching began at a small country school where I taught grades 5 through 8. That was when the country schools were kind of becoming closed down, and so that school closed after that first year that I taught there. And so I took a position at Paxton as the 6th grade teacher. I taught 6th grade there for 10 years and then moved down to 5th grade. I have also for 2 years taught a middle school STEM class to grades 7th and 8th. And next year I'm really excited that we get to bring that to the 6th graders also. So it'll be provided for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders next year. And I will still be teaching 5th grade as well, in addition to that. When I was trying to think of other significant things during my educational career, I really went back to in my second year, I really jumped into a new program called Science Olympiad. I had gone to a summer conference, and Jim Woodland was there presenting about Science Olympiad. I'd never heard of it. And my mentor teacher and I were both in this training during the summer, and we decided that sounded kind of like fun. Maybe we should try that. So we pitched the idea to our administration. There was a huge learning curve over the years of what Science Olympiad entails. And I have now coached Science Olympiad for 16 years. We have a program now. This past year we had 35 kids in 6th through 12th grade participating in our Science Olympiad program. And so it has flourished and become very successful over the years. I also had a hard time thinking of one lesson or one moment that really stands out the most. I also thought of the light bulb moments that are the most impactful when students finally really understand a concept. And it never gets old, it never dulls. It fills me with a sense of pride when they finally get it. And I learned a lot from those moments. I learned a lot about turning a not planned moment in the classroom, because we do have a lot of those, into those light bulb moments. So in my second year teaching at Paxton, we always had this school policy where water in your water bottles only. So if they spill, it's just water, it's not a big sticky mess. Well, unbeknownst to me, one of my students had brought hot chocolate that they made with milk in their closed water bottle and then forgot about it over Christmas break. When we came back, one little tap of the water bottle and it exploded everywhere. It had fermented, it smelled terrible, it was all over the ceiling, all over everything that was nearby. We had to leave the room, apologized a lot to our custodian, and I decided that it wasn't planned, but that was going to be our science lesson for the day. And I think that that class was the one that had the best understanding of how chemical reactions are going to create a gas. And when that gas runs out of room, then it can get a little bit messy. I decided to also take them outside, and we used soda and Mentos and also created our own controlled chemical reactions to explore. And so we really discussed how that happened, and while that wasn't my ideal way to introduce that lesson, it really gave me that start of how if the kids experience something first, they really do make those deeper connections with the content and the information that you're trying to teach them. There's a lot of people that I could probably thank for my educational journey after 18 years. Really at the top of the list would have to be my family, my husband and my 3 girls. They were super supportive of every new idea that I had and wanted to try, even if it meant staying late at school prepping lessons or starting Science Olympiad and spending a lot of time at practice and things like that. When I decided in 2018 that I was going to go get my master's degree, I became aware of a program through UNL called Nebraska STEM. They had received a grant through the National Science Foundation to provide that master's program. It was going to require me to spend 2 weeks for 2 summers on UNL campus taking classes. And my family said, it's fine, you're gonna do great. They encouraged me and assured me that everything was gonna be fine in home while I did that. And then when I was nominated, when I was nominated to apply for this award, they also encouraged me. My oldest daughter, who is now also a teacher, and she is here with me also, she was my go-to proofreader on everything. And so their support has just been so valuable over the year, and I could not have done it without them. Next, I really need to thank my administration, because I've never really been that teacher that got really comfortable into using the same old lessons every year. And every time I went into my administrator's office with the phrase, I have an idea, they were always very supportive, whether it was starting a Science Olympiad team or I want to try a new teaching strategy called flipped math, and I did my research and explained all of that to them, or that we really need to invest in this technology or these robots because it's going to provide an enriching educational opportunity for our students. They always supported me, jumped on board, and said, go for it. I can't wait to hear what you do with it and the opportunities that it brings to our kids. If I didn't have that support from our administration, I don't know that I would have felt as confident making those adjustments with the changes over the years in education and just being able to provide all of those opportunities for students. Last, I really need to thank my mentor teacher from my first year teaching at Paxton. She also kind of had that same never stop learning, never stop exploring, never stop keeping it interesting and trying new things. And so she really kind of pushed me in that direction. She was a 6th grade teacher before I was hired, and then she moved to middle school. And when she was the 6th grade teacher, she had a big international fair and a 3-day field trip and told me, I was told I did not have to continue these things, but she really supported and encouraged me to give it a shot. And I think that was really the beginning of my being okay with not getting too comfortable and being willing to make those changes. And then Jim Woodland, who really supported me in starting Science Olympiad as I was learning that journey. He also wrote a recommendation for my master's program when I applied to that. And then Dr. Amanda Thomas, who was my mentor during my master's program, she really gave me a lot of new ideas to think about in STEM education and designing STEM lessons. And I am forever grateful for their leadership. Lastly, I would love to thank the Board of Education for inviting us here to present and share our passion for education and our journeys with our students. And I am honored to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Board members, if you have any questions or comments, Lisa?
Well, first of all 3 of you are phenomenal teachers, and I thank you for what you do, and I really appreciate humor in the classroom, especially my stint with middle school students for 8 years was very interesting, but a lot of fun. My question is, you are fantastic teachers, kind of role models in what you have done. Have you had a chance to mentor another teacher? And if so, how are you, the main strategy or main thing that you want them to remember from your mentorship?
Do you want to take that? Well, this has actually been my first year of, I don't know if you'd say mentoring, but helping a teacher, actually, this is Cody Pester. He's going from 5th grade to 6th grade, and he's going to be teaching science down at the high school. And so I've been helping him out with the resources that I developed for when I was teaching sixth grade science. And so I've just kind of been walking him through the progression of a lesson that I have, or that I use in fifth grade, and then as well as in sixth grade. So he's not landing flat-footed at the beginning of next year in sixth grade. So I'm hoping he'll be able to, hit the ground running. So he's just kind of been asked through this previous school year, particularly in the spring when he made the announcement that he was moving to sixth grade. He's been asking questions about a lot of how do you teach science, and so I've just kind of been sitting him down and chatting with him, and then showing him different activities, lessons, experiments that I did in sixth grade. So we'll see how that works out.
I haven't necessarily mentored one specific teacher at this point, but after going through all of my training with my master's program, I really wanted to bring a much bigger STEM culture into our school building. And so I took that opportunity to make small connections with a lot of our teachers and give them some of that knowledge that I had obtained through my STEM program. I helped organize our first family STEM night after that, and I worked with all the elementary teachers to plan some of their STEM activities and be more comfortable with what a true STEM activity is. It's not this cookie cutter craft that everybody should end up with the exact same result. There has to be an opening for them to engineer and think outside the box and come up with their own solutions. And so I just feel really grateful that I was able to share a lot of that. And that's still ongoing. I've wrote some grants for things like our VR goggles and things like that in our school. And so just making those available and trying to help other teachers feel comfortable being uncomfortable with things that they're not as used to implementing in the classroom. And so I don't believe that journey is over, and I'm hopeful that I can continue to provide that support and that knowledge to the other teachers as well.
I noticed that both of the teachers said they were honored to be here, but I would like you to know that we are always honored to be in the presence of great teachers, and your coming here is an inspiration to us to do better work than this day, the next day, better and better and better. And you might be in trouble if Mrs. Moody finds out you're skipping, so you might want to get back to work.
I got the note to
You
skip.
got the note? Okay, all right. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
So quorum is now established, and we will be able to proceed with any other business items as necessary. At this time, the next item of business is the Commissioner's Report. Commissioner Maher, would you please provide your report?
Yes, thank you, President Tegmeyer. Well, good morning, State Board members and those watching at home. Summer's finally here, and I'm thrilled to be in my 12th month on the job. We have a big agenda today, so my update will be brief and filled primarily with some shout outs. First of all, I'd like to welcome students from UNK who are in their superintendent preparation program. I'm hopeful that you find this exciting, invigorating, and energizing as you begin your summer months. And also to the person who brought you, Chelsea Fusner, who I've had the delight to work with in our past years in Kearney. So Mrs. Fusner and your group, thank you for being here with us today. The WIOA State Plan Approval, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I want to start by sharing some great news that Nebraska's WIOA State Plan has been approved. You may recall you approved the Nebraska Vocational Rehabilitation portion of this plan earlier this year. The state plan guides the work of Nebraska VR, but is also a collaborative effort between other state agencies. I want to give a big shout out to Linda Foley and her incredible VR team across the state as well as in this building, not only for this accomplishment, but for all the work they do each day. And I would tell you, as I close out my first year on this job, one of my biggest ahas in the position has been the impact that VR has on the department. Nearly half of our staff are VR staff, but also in the work that they do statewide. It's incredible what they do. So big shout out to Lindy Foley and her team. Second, the Nebraska Career Education Conference. I started my week in Kearney with hundreds of career education teachers, school leaders, and advocates focused on career and technical education. The NCE conference celebrated its 50th anniversary, and the energy in the room was palpable. Of those 50 previous convenings, this was the first that I've had the pleasure to be at. I hope it wasn't my last. There is very clearly a buzz around career and technical education in our state, and I think it's a testament to the leadership of Dr. Katie Graham and her team here at the Department of Education. I want to also thank David Jesperson and his communication team for all of their work at this conference and numerous other conferences throughout the year. Next, exempt schools. And other great news, and I think this is the first time in my 12 months that I've had great news to report on exempt schools. Our exempt school system opened on time, June 3rd, and I'm happy to report that the system has been operating without any major issues and has had significant traffic already, with over 876 of the files being started and 723 already completed as of the end of the day yesterday. With the change of process this year, the filers that have completed the process have already been issued their acknowledgement letters, and unless information is later found to be missing from their filing, they're completely done with the exempt school filing process. That's a drastic change from where we were just 1 year ago. I'm especially grateful for the leadership of Bryce Wilson and our exempt school staff, Beth Bolte and Mickey Iverson. Next, staff appreciation. Finally, I just generally want to share my thanks to our staff who have been busy already implementing legislation from last year and planning for the next school year. People often ask if summer is quieter for NDE staff, and I can tell you it is anything but quiet in our offices. Our staff are geared up for a busy summer, one filled with planning, implementing, and working hard for the people of Nebraska. And I know that sounds pithy, but I really mean that. They are truly here working for the people of Nebraska. I want to share my thanks for all their work and all of the help that they've provided me as I've transitioned and settled into my first year as commissioner. The next time I'll see some of you after today likely will be at NDE Days or Administrator Days in Kearney towards the end of July. Our team has a full slate of sessions planned with the theme set as Building Foundations. I would invite all of you to attend that if you were looking at being a future administrator here in Nebraska. During this time, I look forward to sharing more about my priorities for the coming year, specifically focusing on our early literacy vision, our work in that area, and our next steps. It'll be a great event and one that I hope you can all take part in. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Maher. Lisa, you have a question?
Comment. I really appreciate you acknowledging the staff in our Rules and Regulations Committee yesterday. The governor had signed several bills which hadn't happened in that abundance in the past. And I attribute that in part to the staff's work of building a relationship with the governor's office. So thank the staff and you and Dr. Ford as well for, I can't even name them all, but that happens when you build relationships with the people you're working with, and you're doing that so well also, Commissioner.
Thank you. I completed my report with prematurely. First of all, thank you for your comments. There are 0 items that have been identified to be removed from the consent agenda. If you still wish to do that, you can remove items from the consent agenda simply by filling out the form at this time. If there are any items that are removed from the consent agenda, will be taken up under additional business. Now, that concludes my report.
All right. So at this time, I would ask that NDE staff member, David Jesperson, please make your way to the front of the room for a introduction of Scott Phillips, our 2024 Nebraska Teacher of the Year, who is a math teacher from Aurora Middle School in Aurora, Nebraska.
Thank you so much. And it's good that we had this because this is a huge highlight too. I love when we time him up with other teacher awards. I didn't mean it this month, but I think we really do need to keep doing this. This is great. So you may notice that this is his quarterly report, and you're like, wait a minute, it's June. It's not, what did we miss? Well, he missed when his normal quarterly report would be here, and he'll speak about it because he happened to be at this big White House in D.C. He was invited to a state dinner, the first time that the National Teachers of the Year were invited for a formal state dinner hosted at the White House. So a really neat event that he'll fill in on there. So we've kept him very, very busy. He'll talk a little bit about the highlights there. Not only is he being sent around the country through CCSSO, but we're also sending him around and utilizing him very much in conferences that we're hosting with NDE as well. And he's been doing a great job. So my pleasure to introduce Scott Phillips.
I normally have this like huge tote I lug around with all my stuff. I'm like a traveling circus here, so just give me one moment to life of a middle school teacher. Oh, there's my girls. Thank you, David, for the introduction. And like he said, I was kind of reflecting a little bit on the way up here this morning on the last 6 months, and it's been a whirlwind, I'll be honest, but it's also been an amazing experience. And a lot of the times, you know, you look at the big White House journey and you look at the trip to California and all those different things I've experienced, but I think the biggest thing I've taken away from this is just the connections I've made throughout the state. And being able to meet those teachers and face-to-face have those interactions. And honestly, I enjoy presenting most to either college kids or high school kids, primarily because they're like sponges. They want to learn everything about education. And we're at this kind of pivotal moment in education where I think it's really important that we raise up the next level of teachers. And I felt that a really awesome opportunity this year to do that. So over the course of the last 6 months, it started off in mid to late January. I went to California with my cohort of teachers, and that's probably the coolest experience about California was getting to face-to-face meet everybody from the different states. And I got back from that trip, and I told my 7th graders, I now have a friend from every state in the United States, and that's a pretty cool thing to say. And just being able to make those connections, but also ask questions and learn about how other states are different than Nebraska, but how we're also similar. And one of my better friends is right next to me. I'm right behind the G there. We're at Google in this picture. And that's Jeff Norris. And Jeff is the Alabama Teacher of the Year. and he's also a 6th grade math teacher. So being able to have that connection with someone that is from a similar state, but also a similar subject area has been really neat. And I could tell a story about every single person in this picture, and just those connections I've already made have been second to none. So I returned from California, and literally that day I flew into Omaha, and I drove my car to Omaha Scott, and I coached a basketball game. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything, but that's kind of the life of the teacher of the year. You get done with one thing, and life kind of carries on. When you're gone from different events, your kids are still learning math in the classroom. And when I got home, it was just kind of like, okay, what's next? And so I hosted an event called the Math Walk, which would be my, every teacher of the year gets to do a special project with a grant that's given from the Nebraska Department of Education. And once it's approved, you can either do it for your students, or you can do it for your professional development. I chose to host an event for my 7th grade kids and their families. And so at this Math Walk event, a variety of different games that I have in my classroom were in our commons area. Now keep in mind, this is on a Sunday over the weekend, and the kids were not required to be at this. So any kid you see in this picture here chose to be there, which it really means a lot to me that they'd want to come on a weekend and be a part of this. So they were able to do different puzzles, they were able to do different brain teasers, and every time they solved a question, it put them into a raffle that I was able to collect a variety of prizes for the kids. To be honest, this was a bunch of sugar. They got a bunch of pop and candy and those type of things from different donors in the community. And one thing about Aurora that I really love is that it's a very supportive community. So when you reach out to people and you're like, hey, I'm doing this for my 7th grade math classroom, here's what I want to do, they're like, what do you need? And it's a really awesome thing about education is we have those support of the community members and the businesses in town. So this is Clint Mickey, and Clint Mickey is an actual auctioneer in town. And when I told him about this idea, I was like, I want to have 7th graders and their families come to our middle school over the weekend, and we're going to do a math auction. And I do this math auction event in my classroom, and it's really fun. The kids love it. It's probably one of my favorite things I do in the classroom. And Clint is an actual auctioneer. Now, I try my best to auctioneer in the class. I'm not very good at it. The kids think I'm good at it because like they never heard it before. So I'll just let them believe that. But when we had this event, it was pretty awesome because Clint, his every day is this is what he does for his job. And so he comes into the school that day and did an auction with the kids. And it was awesome. We had parents with students, and my family was there. My daughters were on teams, and we had probably, give or take, 80 people participating in this auction together. And if they won the auction, they got some additional raffle entries for the raffle at the end of the day. So I love this picture because this is the group of people that chose to come in on that day. It's Nebraska, right? So we were going to have it outside at the park, and it was really windy that day, so I wasn't going to let the wind deter us from still having this, so we did it inside the middle school. And you can see Clint and his family over there, and for me, this is just so special because this is one of those things that this was an opportunity for me to give back to my school. A lot of sacrifices made by my family, by my students, and I just can't be at two places at once. So to be able to do this event for them, it was a pretty awesome experience. And in case you're wondering, that's our class mascot there in the middle. That's Kevin. He's kind of a staple of 7th grade. So just if you have questions about that, I'll answer those later. And then kind of fast forward a couple weeks later, and this is one of my favorite things about teaching that I didn't realize I was going to enjoy, is the opportunity to build lasting relationships that go far beyond 7th grade. So this is a young man. His name is Baylor Shireman, and I am officially a J-sker now, so I apologize for anybody that maybe takes offense to that. But the reason being is because I taught Baylor in 7th grade. And to teach a 5'7" kid and then have him go through high school, coach him all the years of his high school career, and then to watch him be successful at the college level of sports is really makes me proud. Not just because of his success, but just because of the young man he's becoming. And so I had an opportunity to get him to come to Aurora Middle School before he went to his NBA draft process. And it was kind of a full circle experience because without this platform as a teacher in education, we wouldn't have opportunities like this to get kids in front of heroes. This is a hero to our 7th grade kids and to our 6th grade kids and our 8th grade kids. And believe it or not, he doesn't feel like it sometimes, but at the same time, he has a platform unlike any other. And so just being able to elevate his story and have him speak to the kids was really awesome. So we took a little bit of a moment. I just love this picture because this embodies middle school in a nutshell. You got Baylor there, who's 6'7", next to a sixth grade girl who is about half his height. But it was really neat for him to walk through the old hallways that he went to school at and to share that experience together. It just kind of encapsulates the experience for me as Teacher of the Year, because I spent a lot of time this year reflecting on my career and just the impact I've made, and not just that, but the impact that these kids continue to make on me is pretty awesome. So fast forward, and this is the end of April, and we are going to Washington, D.C., which is a lot of build up to this week, but because the White House is on such a strict schedule, we really didn't know about the trip until about, I'm going to guess, less than a month before we left. So I was like super anxious because I'm trying to figure out, what do I want to do in math class, and how am I going to take care of this, and what are my kids going to do? And so, but we built up to this trip, and this is actually the first trip that my wife and I have ever flown together. And we're just going to get ready to celebrate our 14th year of marriage. And so 14 years later, we finally fly together. And every single day, we were able to FaceTime the girls and show them different things around DC. I was like a kid in a candy shop as far as that goes. I was asking questions and walking. The first thing I wanted to do was go touch the Washington Monument. So we got a video of me walking up and touching the Washington Monument, and then it was just a lot of really cool moments. So my wife was able to go with me, which I'm super grateful for. And so when I was busy with different meetings and presentations and meeting with different people from DC, my wife was able to go with the other spouses and the other plus ones around the city and enjoy that experience. So the evenings were pretty much free for the most part, other than Thursday. And I'll talk about that here in a moment. But I was also able to, I've never been there before. So to go to, I'm standing next to C-3PO and R2-D2. Like, how cool is that? And so just being able to walk around DC with my wife and believe it or not, raising 3 little girls at the ages that they're at right now, it was a nice, just for us, just a chance to bond as a couple, and we really enjoyed that too. Oops, sorry, I skipped a slide. Okay, so on this is the Capitol Hill Day. This is kind of the first big day that we were in DC. I believe this is on Wednesday. And we were able to go around Capitol Hill, and we went with a partner, which they do that for a specific reason, so it kind of takes a little bit of the nerves away because you have someone next to you that is going through a similar experience. So this is John Patrick, and his last name's Corbin, sorry. John Patrick Corbin, and he's from Wyoming. He's the Wyoming Teacher of the Year. So I was able to go with him to his different meetings with the Wyoming representatives and senators, and he was able to go with me on mine. So the cool thing was I go to meet with Deb Fisher, and it was a really busy day there at the Capitol. And this is her assistant, or I don't call him a chief of staff for her, but he was like, hey, Senator Fisher is over in the Capitol building. Do you want to go over there? I was like, sure. He's like, do you want to take the train underneath the building? I was like, yes. So like, it was awesome. So we get on this train and we're like going through it. And I was like I said, I was just taking pictures of everything and videos, and you can see there he's kind of smiling because like this is every day for him. This is his job. This is what he does every single day. And for me, I was just like, well, how fast does this train go? And I was asking all these questions, and it was just really, really awesome. So Deb Fisher and Adrian Smith were kind enough to give me about 15, 20 minutes of one-on-one time. And we talked a lot about just Aurora, a lot about teaching in Nebraska. And that was kind of a breath of fresh air because you're in DC and nobody has any idea where Aurora, Nebraska is at. Some of them don't even know where Nebraska's at. And I learned pretty quickly that DC is a lot different than Nebraska. I'd go on morning runs and you see someone, you're like, hi, good morning. And then they're like, why are you talking to me? So just you kind of learn right away that the Midwest is a pretty cool place to live. But it was refreshing midweek after the long, busy week that we've had, the travel and all those different things, to talk to people that knew where Aurora was at. And I was able to share my story with them and talk about education, which was pretty cool. So then the highlight of the week was at the tail end. It was on Thursday night. And we found out probably about 2 or 3 weeks before we left that we were going to be able to attend a state dinner. And this, like David said earlier, this is the first ever state dinner that has been hosted for teachers. So we are officially the distinguished guests at this state dinner. And we're in DC the whole week, and we talked to multiple people that had a lot of pull in the political realms, and they're like, we've never been to a state dinner. Like, you guys are really lucky. I mean, so it was a really, really cool experience. And so I'm gonna kind of try my best to body this in a short little story here. So I learned, first of all, that eating a meal at the White House is a little bit different than picking up a meal at Runza, all right? It's a little bit more official. So there are certain ways to place your silverware once you're done. And so we're all like taking pictures of this. And the funny part about this was on the way to the White House, all the plus ones, this is the Hawaii Teacher of the Year, this is her husband, and he's checking out, you can see on his phone there, he's looking at the how to put his silverware down. We were all like super nervous. We're like, what if we put the silverware wrong? Like, we offend the chefs, right? And so it was really awesome. And I would like to think, and maybe I'm not right with this, but I would like to think the staff there at the White House noticed a difference with hosting teachers in comparison to hosting like dignitaries or other presidents or celebrities, just because we were all so grateful to be there. And we were talking to the staff and asking them questions. Like, I was talking to the people serving the food and just asking them about how long they've been working there and how many state dinners they've been a part of. And it was a really awesome experience. So I'm gonna boil this down to 3 different categories. And I do this with my students sometimes. I love this activity. It's called high, low, and buffalo. So at the White House, I had a high, like a really cool moment, a low, which is kind of like, oh, that was kind of a bummer, and then a buffalo, which a buffalo to me is like when you're surprised by something. Like if you went outside in Lincoln right now and a buffalo crossed the street, all of you'd be like, whoa, a buffalo. So that's, that's the surprise of the White House. So my first high is that it was the most surreal experience that I've ever experienced, both professionally and personally. So we get there, and I actually enjoyed the check-in process. You go through like 5 different levels of security, and I'm kind of a nerd like that because I enjoyed that, like, oh, this is really neat how you did that. And so we get there finally about 30 minutes into it, and we walk in literally on a red carpet, and every nook and cranny of the White House, there was a live musician. So there's these orchestra and violins and cellos playing this music, and it was incredible. My daughter plays the violin, so just we got a lot of videos of the violin player, the violinists, and we sent them to my daughter, and that was a pretty neat thing too. So the high of the experience was just the fact that I was standing in a historically significant place. So there on the left of the screen is me standing in a room where that sword is George Washington's sword, right? How often do you get to see that in person? And this part of the White House that we were on at the first level is the level of the first ladies. And so it has all the, like, not all of them, but a lot of the paintings of the first ladies. I saw Abraham Lincoln's China. I saw, obviously, George Washington's sword. We were in the same room that FDR did his fireside chats. I mean, you're standing there and you're just feeling this sense of, like, appreciation for all the people, all the founding fathers that paved the way for us to get to this point. And so there's a lot of moments you just had to soak it in and just try your best to just experience that to its fullest. And then on the right there, that is the Arkansas Teacher of the Year. And I bet you could guess his first name. His first name is Bo. That's a perfect Arkansas name, right? And so he's a really nice guy. And we're standing there just kind of trying to reflect on everything. And he's like, hey, let's get a picture together in front of George Washington. And that George Washington painting is actually the original painting that was saved by Dolly Madison when the White House burned down. And so she ordered her staff to roll it up, and she like ran out of the White House with that painting in her hands. And just to be standing within touching distance of that, I didn't touch it because I didn't want to get tackled by security, but like you're standing right there, and it's just like you're just overcome with this sense of gratitude. Like, why do I deserve this? And it was just full of those incredible experiences. Now, it's going to sound like kind of a weird low, but you learned at state dinners that things are just a little bit different. So one of the things that I didn't realize was going to take place was you don't sit by your spouse. It was a weird, like, it's not a Midwest thing. Like, I go to Pueblo in Aurora, and I sit next to my wife in the same booth, right? So we go to the state dinner, and it was me and then 2 other people and then my wife. And the reason they do that is because they want us to mingle and talk to people. But then also the distinguished guests are supposed to be in direct line sight of the stage. And so I was sitting like towards the back facing the front, and my wife was across from me. So it's kind of funny. I was like, hey, let's take a picture of you sitting there by yourself. But That was, and I know it was kind of a weird low, but it was a little bit weird to eat the meal and not be sitting directly next to my wife. And then the buffalo is kind of a shout out to home. So about a month before we left for DC, and I'm not sure if it was David or if it was the CCSSO, but they reached out to my principal and Mr. Weisler, and he organized a card for me that was full of letters from past students, past athletes, current coworkers, current students. And so I'm looking for my seat, and the first thing I recognize is the Aurora Husky logo. And I'm like, oh, this is I wasn't expecting this. And so it was a surprise for every teacher had this. Every single of the 55 teachers had this at their table, something like this. And so I open it up and I start reading the first couple, and I just was overcome with emotion. I was like, okay, I can't. So I start like almost bawling, and I sit down next to people I've never met before, and they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, I'm Scott Phillips, nice to meet you. You know, and as I'm like fighting off tears. So I ended up saving that for later to read it, but that's something that I will cherish for the rest of my life. And it really goes to show that I'm experiencing something that I'll never be able to experience again. I'll never go to the White House in this fashion again. And the thing that was most impactful for me was words, right? Words from students, words from teachers. And I just think that that's a huge message that the power of words goes a long ways. And I think so many times words just get thrown out there, especially today with social media, that those words I will forever be able to hold on to and to cherish. And then just the biggest buffalo of the trip and the last 6 months has been this group of people. It is full of people that I have a lot of similarities with, a lot of differences with, and I've just learned a lot from every single person in this group. So I'm excited for the next stage of this journey, and that next stage is going to be one I'll share about here just in one moment. So I have one little quick life lesson I want to teach you, and I love this because this is kind of my message that I've been carrying around with me as I go to different places around the state, and also I took this with me when I went to DC to talk to some people about this. So I have this little pot here, and this is going to be our life. And so we could say this is our job, this is our family, this is our community, whatever it may be. So I'm going to associate this with the state of education. So the educational field as a teacher can sometimes feel like a boiling pot of water, right? You have this boiling pot of water, and we take these different items, we place them in the boiling pot of water. So the first item I have here, it's like a magic trick here. Oh, look at this carrot. So I have a carrot in this my bag here, and I place it inside this boiling pot of water. And what that's going to happen to that carrot is it's going to soften. And I don't want to be like a carrot. And when I think of softened, I think of I'm going to compromise who I am because of the environment. I want to compromise what I believe in because of the environment. I don't want the environment to change me in that way. And I think as a teacher, it can be really easy to compromise what you initially became a teacher for because it's the easy way out, right? It's easy for me to say, let's do a worksheet today, kids, because I'm tired from flying. It's easy for me to say, well, maybe just this one time I can do this as a teacher. But that is not who I want to be. I want to stand true to who I am and not let the environment soften me. The next one, oopsies, skipped it, sorry. The next one is an egg. So if you take an egg and you place it in a boiling pot of water, what's going to happen to that egg? It's going to harden, right? So if I become hardened by the environment, that means I become closed off to any kind of change. I'm like, well, no, I've done it this way for 20 plus years. I'm only going to do it this way. And that's not who I want to become either. I want to be a better teacher in 10 years than I was 10 years ago. So I don't want to become hardened by the environment. And then the last one is a coffee bean. So I keep this jar of coffee beans on my school desk for two reasons. For one, because it smells good. So I always, every now and then, if I'm having a down day, I just take a sniff of that. And I also keep it because I always have kids ask me a question. They always say, Mr. Phillips, why are there coffee beans on your desk? And I'll be like, well, let me tell you. And I'll give them this quick little story. So if you place coffee beans into a boiling pot of water, that environment that becomes sometimes overwhelming, it changes the environment. And that, to me, I'm in this environment that's a lot different than who I am. And I am trying in my best way possible to leave a positive impact on this environment. And I realize it's a daily process. It's a slow process. As an educator, it can be sometimes frustrating because it doesn't happen overnight. Those changes happen over time and over the consistent good habits that I built as a teacher and as an individual. So I didn't come up with that myself. That's too clever for my own knowledge, but it's from a book called The Coffee Bean, and you could probably read it in a 15-minute time frame. So it's a really easy read. It does have pictures. That's pretty cool. So, but it's from an author I really like. His name is John Gordon, and he has a lot of really good just life lesson type books. And so these are some of my favorite books that I've read from him. And the training camp book is actually special to me because I give that to every one of my athletes after I've coached them in basketball. All right, so what's next for me? Obviously, I'm halfway through my 2024 tenure as Teacher of the Year. And the next big trip will be when I go in mid-July to Alabama, and I'm going to attend a week-long of NASA Space Camp. And that's going to be awesome. So I've heard that DC is the most memorable trip with your spouse, and it's just a lot of memories that you're building. And NASA is the biggest bonding trip because we're going to be going back to our college days of staying in a dormitory, and we'll go there for a week, and we'll learn how to become a NASA astronaut. So that's my backup plan for my retirement if I ever want to get out of teaching, is become an astronaut. But it's going to be an awesome experience, and I'm just grateful for this opportunity to not only present to you today, but to continue to represent our state throughout the year. Are there any questions?
We've had a lot of wonderful Teachers of the Year, but I truly appreciate your energy, your vision that you provide for your students and people who meet you. But the one thing that you've done that's memorable to me was right after you were inducted, so to speak, you wrote the most precious thank you that I received. And it was so heartfelt, and it wasn't short. You took time to handwrite a thank you to the board. And I'm sure you sent one to everybody. But you said words matter. They do. That affected me deeply, that you took the time with all the things that you have to do, want to do, and hope to do, that you did that. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I still have your note, and I have it in my planner. And every day when I open up my planner, I see your note. That's how genuine it was, and how important it was for me to remember you and remember what being Teacher of the Year means to all the teachers that we place that honor on. And you are serving so well, and you proved it today. You taught us all something while we listened and learned about your adventure. And just, have so much fun at Space Camp. Yep. You will love it.
Thank you.
Scott, I love your sense of humor. I really appreciate that. And just listening to you and thinking about how you teach today, you have wonderful skill in taking important life concepts and making them concrete. That was just really fun for you to use the carrot and the coffee beans and the eggs. So thank you for that. And it also struck me that certainly translates to being a great math teacher, because so much of math is being able to take abstract things and make them concrete for people. Have fun with the last part, and take time when you have a second or two for yourself. That's really important, because I know it has to be a whirlwind. It's a wonderful storm, right? But you need to make sure that you're taking care of you too.
Yep, thank you.
So when Scott has come in here and talked to us, I've stayed quiet because I know who Scott is. Scott's a class act from Aurora. I was on the board when we hired him. If you're on a local school board, basically you're rubber stamping what your principals are saying. Scott has a large influence on kids. I have a son that Scott coached. And he does things that most coaches, and I'll go from a coaching aspect. I'm not a math guy, but there's nobody better to teach my kids than Scott Phillips. And I don't know if this is directly related, but, and I know you still talk to Henry from time to time. Henry's now coaching and also is obtaining his special education degree and teaching. So there's no better than Scott Phillips. He understands the kids. He understands Aurora. Aurora is a very special place. It's a little different than a lot of communities. But people move to Aurora not because of a job, but because of the school. And we have a lot of Scott Phillips. And I think he would be the first to say that in our public school system. And again, you're a class act, and I couldn't be prouder that you're our Nebraska Teacher of the Year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, I won't repeat all the wonderful things I've said. I just want to tell you that your character and your integrity really shine through, and it's been a pleasure to hear your reports, and also to lighten the mood a bit, tell your wife her dress, and she looked fabulous. So thank you so much for coming, and blessings on the last 6 months. And as Patty said, yes, try and slow down and enjoy the ride. So, and have fun at Space Camp.
Yep.
I feel like for math teachers, it's probably going to be just like, that high point. So thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
It was great.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, well, we are at the President's Report, and I'm going to very briefly just ask our board members to consider what things they can bring for the good of the order, as I know many of us have conferences, so just be thinking of those to share at the end of our meeting. There is no President's Report other than that. And at this time, we do not have anyone here to give public comment. There is also no written public comment has been submitted. And so before we begin the consent agenda and the business of the board, we will take a 10-minute break.
Sherry David. And you're a former teacher. Good for you. And where are you from? What schools did you teach at? I was at and then I was, you know how far back this goes. I was for county superintendent, and we still had 13 country schools. Oh my! But that was fun. They were very hard working people. So yeah, they have to be to have all this different grades. That's right. That's nice. Yeah. And I volunteer, and I think there's volunteers at every board meeting. Not familiar with what is that on online or in person? No, it's in person. We have common interests and it is diverse. So it's interesting.
You just did the Apple thing? So let's take some time off of work. Yeah, I do with my notes as well. I take copious notes and then I go back and it's a pleasure to meet you. I was close though. I was like, did you check to see if it's on? There's more to do that.
Hey, I like it when I'm yeah. If it was beyond that, we were done.
Right, exactly. They're still good. I will. He's going to. Are you well, I'm new to Wikipedia, but I grew up in August. So when did you start fall? Last November, I came from Nebraska. Oh, nice to meet you. Yeah. Not enough. Yeah. What? Yeah. Oh, it's usually set.
I didn't.
Really?
The meeting will resume in 2 minutes. So we still have quorum.
Because you're gonna be
I know.
moving right into this.
Has anything been? Okay. No, that was, that, okay. All right, we are going to resume the meeting of the state board. So we are on item 6, the consent agenda. No items have been pulled from the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second that motion.
Thank you. It is moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Per board policy, there is no discussion on the motion to adopt the consent agenda. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Penner. Yes. Jones. Fricky.
Yes.
Neary. Goebbels.
Yes.
Morrison. Tegmeyer.
Yes.
Kojons.
Yes.
5 yes, 3 absent.
The votes are 5 yea, 0 nays, and 3 absent. The affirmative has it, and the consent agenda is adopted. The next item of business are the reports for the standing committees. And the first item on that is the executive committee, and I will report on behalf of the executive committee. The Executive Committee reports on the June 6, 2024 meeting of the committee. Members present were Chair Elizabeth Tegmeyer and Kirk Penner. The committee first reviewed the proposed addendum to the employee agreement between the Commissioner and the State Board of Education. The committee recommends the board adopt the addendum to the employment agreement between the Commissioner and the State Board of Education. The committee then discussed 2 proposed amendments to Board Operating Policies 1.06 and 1.10. The committee recommends these policy revisions appear on the August 2024 agenda as an action item. The committee then reviewed a summary of the 2024 legislative session and the potential implications for the executive committee. The committee also discussed the development of legislative priorities for the next biennium and reviewed the plan for the legislative work session. The commissioner presented recommendations on the strategic plan, including a focus on the state's ESSA goals, the legislative priorities expected to be adopted in August, and the development of a new strategic plan starting in January 2025. This concludes the executive committee report. Elizabeth Tegmeyer, Chair. Are there any questions on the executive committee report? Okay, seeing none. Item 7.1A. Is there a motion on 7.1A?
I have that motion. I move that this board adopt the proposed addendum to the employment agreement between Commissioner Maher and the State Board of Education, which provides for a 5% increase in salary effective July 1, 2024.
I second the motion.
It is moved and seconded to adopt the proposed addendum to the employment agreement between Commissioner Maher and the State Board of Education, which provides for a 5% increase in salary effective July 1st, 2024. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay. No? Okay, seeing none, the motion is to adopt the proposed addendum to the employment agreement between Commissioner Maher and the State Board of Education, which provides for a 5% increase in salary effective July 1st, 2024. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Morrison. Tegmeyer.
Yes.
Kojons.
Yes.
Neary. Fricky.
Yes.
Jones. Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
5 yes, 3 absent.
You're welcome. The affirmative has it in the motion to adopt the proposed addendum to the employment agreement between Commissioner Maher and the State Board of Education, which provides for a 5% increase in salary effective July 1st, 2024, is adopted. Item 7.1B. This is a discussion item, proposed amendments to the board operating policies. Board members, are there any questions or discussion on this item?
No questions, but just, these are both changes that need to be made because of legislation. So it was pretty cut and dried, and actually looking at the draft, the changes were pretty simple to make, which was good.
Patty, I think that reflects the work of the executive committee last year on the operating policies. So thank you for your contributions that way. And Mr. Penner, who was also on the executive committee last year. I'm trying to think, and you were too, Lisa. Thank you. So, yeah, those are just legislative things. And so the two items for that we're changing are the PPC has been eliminated, so we had to adjust that. And then we, due to legislation, will have public comment at every meeting, not just the majority. So, moving right along to Budget and Finance Committee. Chair Patsy Kojans will report on behalf of the Budget and Finance Committee meeting.
First of all, the Budget and Finance Committee really got to work out the last two meetings. It's been a marathon, but they charge right through and do a really great job. The Budget and Finance Committee reports that its Thursday, June 6th meeting members present were Patsy Kojans, Lisa Fricke, and Patty Goebbels. The committee reviewed 9 action items with NDE staff providing summaries and answering questions on all action items. The committee is supporting all 9 for full board consideration. Additionally, the committee reviewed 12 other upcoming action items, no rest for the wicked right here, action items that included a summary of upcoming work for committee related to the 2024 legislative session, an upcoming agreement with DHHS for child care development funds, a contract amendment to support the Child Care Resource Network, the upcoming McKinney-Vento homeless grant funds, a contract for homeless youth and young adults, a mental health grant, the upcoming 2-year opportunity grant funds, a contract to provide external evaluation services of the 21st Century Learning Centers grant funds to eligible providers to administer the College Pathway Program, the possibility of Gear Up funds to address and increase the number of low-income students prepared for post-secondary education, a contract with ESUCC to administer the textbook loan program, and an overview of NDE's current budget with the timeline for the upcoming submission of the biennial and just deficit budgets. Last, the committee reviewed the monthly board travel expenses, noting no concerns. This concludes the Budget and Finance Committee report. Patsy Kojans, Chair.
Are there any questions on the Budget and Finance Committee report? Okay. Well, we thank Budget and Finance. That was a lot of time yesterday and discussion. Item 7.2A, are there any reports, questions on the reports of 7.2A, board travel? Okay, 7.2B, action item, approve the 2024-2025 revision action grants. Is there a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to adopt the proposed revisions to Rule 4.
I think we're on item 7.2.B.
Yes, Madam President, I have that
Oh,
motion.
thank you, Patty.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I move to approve the 2024-2025 revision action grants.
Is there a second on this? I'll second. Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve the 2024-2025 revision action grants. Is there any discussion on this motion? The motion is to approve the 2024-2025 revision action grants. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Neary, Goebbels,
Yes.
Morrison, Kojons,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Jones. 5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to approve the 2024-2025 revision action grants is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.2.c?
Madam President, I move to authorize the Commissioner to contract for a special education technical assistance project.
Is moved and seconded to authorize the Commissioner to contract for a special education technical assistance project. Is there any discussion on the motion? The motion is to authorize the Commissioner to contract for a special education technical assistance project. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Morrison, Fricky,
Yes.
Jones, Goebbels,
Yes.
Kojons,
Yes.
Neary, Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Penner.
Yes.
5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to authorize the Commissioner to contract for a special education technical assistance project is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.2.d?
I move to issue subawards to carry out the federal IDEA Part C grant continuation activities.
Second. Whoops. I second.
Is moved and seconded to issue subawards to carry out the federal IDEA Part C grant continuation activities. Is there any discussion on the motion? The motion is to issue subawards to carry out the federal IDEA Part C grant continuation activities. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Neary, Morrison, Kojons,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Jones, Fricky,
Yes.
5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to issue subawards to carry out the federal IDEA Part C grant continuation activities is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.2.e?
Yes, Madam President, I move to authorize the Commissioner to contract for providing annual behavioral awareness training and developing and implementing and administering an ongoing statewide teacher support system.
Second.
It is moved and seconded to authorize the Commissioner to contract for providing annual behavioral awareness training and developing, implementing, and administering an ongoing statewide teacher support system. Is there any discussion on the item? Patsy?
I would just like to say that I'm thankful that this is finally happening, and that I hope it serves teachers and students across the state equally. And I want to thank the Commissioner for taking action on this. It's been long needed.
The motion is to authorize the Commissioner to contract for providing annual behavioral awareness training and developing, implementing, and administering an ongoing statewide teacher support system. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Goebbels,
Yes.
Neary, Kojons,
Yes.
Jones, Fricky,
Yes.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Morrison. 5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to authorize the commissioner to contract for providing annual behavioral awareness training and developing, implementing, and administering an ongoing statewide teacher support system is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.2.f?
I move to authorize the commissioner to contract to provide CPR and AED training to public and non-public schools.
Second.
Is moved and seconded to authorize the commissioner to contract to provide CPR and AED training to public and non-public schools. Is there any discussion on the motion? Patsy?
Just to say that the same thing I said about the previous motion is true of this one too, that I'm thankful to see that happening in our schools.
I actually have a question since I don't sit on this committee for Zainab. I wondered if she could come and answer some questions.
Good morning, Zainab Rida, Equity Officer and Administrator for the Office of Coordinated Student Support Services. I'm happy to answer any question you may have for me.
Thank you. Thanks. So I was wondering, how will this training be rolled out to schools, especially because we're doing public and non-public schools, and it's not to exceed 90,000. So I'm curious how that will happen.
That's a great question. So we are partnering with local health department, ESUs, and other entities across the state to provide those services. So for instance, with ESUs, we have many non-public schools have reached out to ESUs to request those trainings. So we're going to provide those training in at least 5 different regions across the state. So, and will be open to all public and non-public schools.
And how will the schools find out about the trainings?
We will send flyer and emails, and we share it with all the ESUs and local health departments.
So the schools will be contacted. They don't have to dig to find out about the training.
That's for sure.
Okay, good. Well, I appreciate your work on that. I was just
Absolutely.
curious how that would happen, and so thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussion?
Thank you.
The motion is to authorize the commissioner to contract to provide CPR and AED training to public and non-public schools. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Neary, Morrison, Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Jones, Kojons,
Yes.
Fricky.
Yes.
5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to authorize the commissioner to contract to provide CPR and AED training to public and non-public schools is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.2.g?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to accept the State Apprenticeship Expansion Formula Grant from the U.S. Department of Labor and authorize that the Commissioner to enter into contracts to carry out grant activities.
I second.
Is moved and seconded to accept the State Apprenticeship Expansion Formula Grant from the U.S. Department of Labor and authorize the Commissioner to enter into contracts to carry out grant activities. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I am so excited that we have this grant from the U.S. Department of Labor. You know, our initial apprenticeship programs are really providing more teachers, going to be providing more teachers, and with this grant, there's a potential for another 200, maybe 260 teachers. So this is a program that can expand. I'm sure there are other schools that would like to be part of an apprenticeship, and so there's an opportunity now for some of those schools to do that. And also with this grant, there will be personnel to coordinate the apprenticeship programs, and I think that's really important as well.
Well, I think that the people that put this together and worked so hard on it were so excited every time they brought it to our attention in our meetings. And I think they thought maybe no one else would be as excited, but the board members were twice as excited, I think, and kept saying over and over again, this is just fantastic, this is just fantastic. So I'd like to thank them for all their efforts, and I just can't help but think we're going to make some real progress when it comes to more and more teachers. We've started the ball rolling, and now it's really going to go.
The motion is to accept the State Apprenticeship Expansion Formula Grant from the U.S. Department of Labor and authorize the Commissioner to enter into contracts to carry out grant activities. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Jones, Goebbels,
Yes.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Morrison, Neary, Penner,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Kojons.
Yes.
5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to accept the State Apprenticeship Expansion Formula Grant from the U.S. Department of Labor and authorize the Commissioner to enter into contracts to carry out grant activities is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.2.h?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to approve a grant to fund a Child Development Associate Credential Navigator.
I'll second.
It is moved and seconded to approve a grant to fund a Child Development Associate Credential Navigator. Is there any discussion on the item? On the motion, excuse me. Patsy?
I would like to ask Melody Hobson to come forward for the next couple of motions, just so that everybody understands exactly what's happening, since early childhood is really at the forefront of many of our hearts and minds. I hope I didn't put you on the spot too much, but you're the expert for this.
Good morning. I'm Melody Hobson. I'm the administrator for the Office of Early Childhood Education. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Did you want me to just to do a little bit of a synopsis and overview? Okay. Okay. So this is something that as we're on the forefront of states doing, an early childhood. The Early Childhood Child Development Associate Credential it's not an associate degree, but is a credential that is national, in fact, internationally recognized as it's kind of billed as the first best step in kind of the pathway that could end at at this navigator, at this credential. It could also then move into an associate degree or move towards a bachelor's degree in early childhood with a teaching certificate. And the navigator, and Nebraska has worked really hard in the past, probably 5 years, to build a number of pathways to get this early childhood associate credential. There are pathways that could go through the community colleges. There are also pathways that you can take selected in-service training, just professional development in a number, I think there are like 9 or 11 areas. And so there's also a portfolio that is required and an observation and a number of teaching hours that are required to get this CDA. And so it's also something that can happen through like a CTE program. So it can be like sometimes an embarrassment of riches because you have a number of different ways to do this. So a CDA navigator is the person who can take all the consolidated calls, can work with the professional development people who would go out and observe the student. They can facilitate a student to decide, okay, do you want to go through like Metro's program? Is this better that you work through your Head Start program? And so the CDA Navigator has also, that we've piloted with some federal dollars, and that had, well, no, not federal, private dollars that came through the RESPECT grant. And the CDA Navigator has been housed at the Early Childhood Training Center for several days a week and at Buffett Early Childhood Institute for several days a week. And so that navigator has also worked with people in other states to kind of build a national system. And so it has been very, very successful. People have been really very grateful that they have somebody they can call and talk to and help them walk through this process. And so we are going to continue to fund it with federal dollars with the Child Care Development Block Grant funds that we receive from Health and Human Services. Any questions?
I actually have a few questions. So your explanation helped with some of them, but so I'm confused just a tad bit here. Can you tell me what the Early Childhood Training Center is? Where is that? Is that a state-run?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the Early Childhood Training Center is actually part of my office.
Okay.
25 years ago, it was a separate entity, but about 2006, through state statute, it became part of the Office of Early Childhood. And it is funded, at this point, it is funded almost entirely with federal Child Care Development Block Grant funds that come through local state HHS, and then come to the Office of Early Childhood, the Department of Education. And it houses essentially the hub of the professional development system for early childhood educators across the state. Anything else, any more that you'd like to?
I have,
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
There's a whole series. So
Oh,
then,
sure.
so then this navigator is housed jointly here, well, through your department at the Early Childhood Training Center, but then also at the Buffett Early Childhood Institute. And my question is, it says for the grant subawards that per Appendix C, it was an exemption to competitive bidding because it's through a state agency, but where it's housed at the Buffett Early Childhood.
It will no longer be housed at the Buffett Institute. It will be at ESU 3 within the, because Early Childhood Training Center is actually housed within ESU 3. We rent space, we lease space from
Okay.
ESU 3.
Okay. And then, so then another question is, what reports have been provided to show the impacts of the grant
I did
investment?
not prepare like a PowerPoint or a report. Last month I was asked and I had to go back and get the number of CDA people in the state. And of course, I forgot to bring it today, so I can provide that again as well. But I can provide that to you. I did not prepare a full report for this, but I can get you any data that I think you might need.
Okay, all right. I don't have any further questions. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I'm very happy that what your programs and things that you offer are not just for public schools, it's for non-public schools as well. And there was a grant that expired that provided training. I think we talked about this. Is there a chance to get another grant like that so that more opportunities for training for public and non-public schools? Do you know at this point? You might not know.
I don't anticipate that there will be any in the near future. That was money that came through Federal Health and Human Services as pandemic money.
Any further questions or discussion?
Melody, you can't leave, you have to stay.
All right.
The motion is to approve a grant to fund a Child Development Associate Credential Navigator. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Neary, Kojons,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Jones, Fricky, Yes. Goebbels,
Yes.
Morrison, Tegmeyer,
Abstain.
4 yes, 1 abstain, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to approve a grant to fund a Child Development Associate Credential Navigator is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.2.I?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to authorize the Commissioner to accept preschool development grant funds to provide a diagnostic examination of the Nebraska Early Childhood Professional Record System.
I second the motion.
It is moved and seconded to authorize the Commissioner to accept preschool development grant funds to provide a diagnostic examination of the Nebraska Early Childhood Professional Records System. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair, I would like Melody Hobson to define a little bit of this for the board.
I thought I still had it on, sorry. We call it NECPRS. It is a system that we use for a couple of different things. Historically, when we were all in the paper pencil era, and I still sometimes am, but when people would go to trainings, child care providers would go to trainings, and whether it was a 1-hour in-service credit or a conference and that they got training for, and then they would get a paper certificate. Sometimes people still give those, but many times they're all electronic. Anyway, then people would put that in their file back at their child care program that they would, or even their school if they were getting it for ongoing hours. And so if you moved, you might have difficulty getting your records because they were all very paper pencil. Sometimes people would, they get lost, and then you didn't have records, and then, you could get in trouble, or your child care program that would employed you would get in trouble because they didn't have enough of the information that you had taken the professional development that you needed for the year or for something specific. What NECPRS does, it's an electronic way to handle people's individual records. So no matter where you are, you can change employers, you can go get out of childcare for a while, come back in, and you have that record, and it's always available to you. So we have about 22,000 people, providers who are working in the early childhood field who have accounts in NECPRS right now. And they can have access to all of their training. From this year, last year, there's a way to import trainings that are in college coursework, things like that. So that's kind of a simple one-way use for it. It is also used to verify training for programs that are part of Step Up to Quality. And directors can link individual employees to their employer profile for Step Up to Quality. Then probably upcoming, one of the most important things that's going to happen with it is that we have a school readiness tax credit that for starting in July, people can to get an attestation for all of the training they've taken during the year, and the amount of training and what the training does will help them to apply then with the Department of Revenue in next tax season, so they can get up to like $3,000 of a tax credit. So this is the electronic way that providers can have access to this. They can facilitate this tax credit, and it really also houses information for Step Up to Quality. So the diagnostic then is, NECPRS has been in operation for about 10 years. And technology has changed, our needs have changed, we started out with, 0, and now we have 22,000 people in there. And so we also have, that's also additional time required for staff to use it. And so there are things that need to be really updated, revised. There are things now that we realize, okay, there are better ways to do this, and things that could link to our regional early learning connection coordinators and some of their work, so that for posting trainings, so that it's less work for everybody, And also so that we are keeping up with data security needs, because this, while we don't have social security numbers in this system, still it's information that needs to be safeguarded. And so we need to be preparing ourselves and doing things as efficiently as possible, and looking for duplications and how to simplify and how to update and get us ready for the next, hopefully, 10 or 15 years.
Thank you again, Melody.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is, I know that you partner with DHHS.
Yep.
Do they have access to the data that this would create?
They can. Right now, I don't think they do. It was designed so that we could include them. They've never ever used it, but that is one of the things that could be an efficiency. If HHS were to want to do that, they could do desk reviews of, child care provider stuff without having to individually, when they go out to the program, they could do it from anywhere. They don't do that at this point.
I wish they did utilize it, because I thought if they used it enough, they could share in the cost.
Well, it also, honestly, that it is a voluntary system right now. Like we said, we have 20,000 people in there. We really don't know how many people actually work in the early childhood field in Nebraska, because we don't have any requirement for them to be in there.
So I have a question. It says that the NCFF is providing $400,000 to NDE to lead this diagnostic study. The estimated cost is $171,250. So can you tell me what you plan to do with the surplus of $200,000?
So, spoiler alert, in the budget committee in August or September, we will probably be coming back with another RFP for a different facet of this work. Right now, we're looking at what are the needs. Then there will have to be some other very specialized looking at the technology needs, which I am not really qualified to answer, because I'm not the tech person. So right now, what this would be doing is looking at who are our partners, who are the users of the system, what is it that they see that works well, that does not work well, who are the stakeholders, what do internally all of the people who have different roles, because there are administrator roles, there are coach roles, there are individual provider roles. Is it working well for them now? What would make it work better? What should we dump? What features do we continue? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. That's why it's only
Right.
part of that amount.
Okay, so the time frame on this, if you're coming back in August with possibly coming back with another request, how quickly do you anticipate this diagnostic work?
I will probably be coming back with, depending on what we hear from this, I will probably be coming back and giving you the update. Not that we have the RFP, because I will be informing you probably, like I said, spoiler alert, that we will be probably doing one. At that point, we will not have gotten the information back for a contractor at that point. That would be something probably later in like September or so. And then the diagnostic would be done at the last couple of months of the year, the technical piece.
So this $171,250 diagnostic piece won't be done until the end of the year?
This will be done it'll be towards the end of the year. There may be some interplay with this and any technical work.
Okay.
So they are ready to start out with all of the information, and the first thing would be looking at, doing all of these interviews and things like that. So that happens now. As they write that up, then that might be informed by some technical work towards the end of the year, and at the end of the year, we should have a package of this is what we need to do.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Actually, I am appreciating, I know the Planning Evaluation Committee has probably heard this, but this is good, because sometimes what we read doesn't always translate into that depth of detail.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
All right. So the motion is to authorize the commissioner to accept preschool development grant funds to provide a diagnostic examination of the Nebraska Early Childhood Professional Records System. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Kojons,
Yes.
Neary, Jones, Penner,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Morrison, Goebbels.
Yes.
5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to accept preschool development grant funds to provide a diagnostic examination of the Nebraska Early Childhood Professional Record System is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.2.j?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to authorize the Commissioner to approve a contract for a statewide anchor for program quality assessments.
Second motion?
It is moved and seconded to authorize the Commissioner to approve a contract for statewide anchor for program quality assessments. Is there any discussion on the motion?
So, an anchor, and some of you have heard this a bunch, and some of you have never heard it before, so I'll try to be as brief as possible, then ask me what we use observational assessment to look at the quality of classrooms in school district operated programs through Results Matter, and through early childhood programs in the community, both for their own program improvement and also for Step Up to Quality as a way to measure the quality for the rating system. We also can do that in Head Start programs when we're invited to come in to do that. So having said that, the program quality assessment is as valid as the people who do the assessment. And the tools each have specific requirements, and all the criteria needs to be interpreted the same way. So an anchor is someone who has trained with the makers of the tools to be highly reliable, and to be able to teach other people to maintain a high level of reliability. So if you walk into a program and 3 people do the assessment, then they'll all interpret the criteria the same way. And so that is what the anchor does. They actually train people, and then everybody who does an assessment, after about every 5th assessment or so, they have to come back and to do another assessment with the anchor so that they maintain their reliability and stay, so the interpretations stay the same.
So thank you for that explanation. I feel like we've talked about anchors before. And so, and I do understand that this contract is with one particular person, but do we have more than one anchor throughout the state?
We have, we may have, well, I think we have another anchor who does, because we have like an infant, we have 2 different sets of tools. The classroom assessment and scoring accountability system, the class, and then what we call the ECHRS tool is the environment readiness skills tools. Each of them have different levels, like for infants and toddlers and preschool and family child care. So yes, we do have other experts, but their contracts are not as, those are for tools that are not used as highly as this person is pretty flexible. She does a number of the different tools. So there's actually are under 50,000, so you don't see those.
Okay, thank you. I just know we had talked anchors before, and so I was just trying to.
I think at one time in a previous year, we might have had 2 anchors who each were over 50,000, but we don't this year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion?
Thank you, Melody.
The motion is to authorize the Commissioner to approve a contract for a statewide anchor for program quality assessments. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Morrison, Kojons,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Neary, Jones. 5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to authorize the Commissioner to approve a contract for a statewide anchor for program quality assessments is adopted. Agenda item 7.3, Vice Chair Patty Goebbels will report on behalf of the Planning and Evaluation Committee meeting.
Thank you. The Planning and Evaluation Committee reports on their committee meeting on June 6, 2024. The members present were Vice Chair Patty Goebbels and Patsy co-johns. The committee reviewed the action item related to conditional approval of new non-public schools, approval of interim program schools for the 2024-2025 school year, accreditation of current accredited public, non-public, and special purpose schools, and educational service units. The committee recommends the approval of these items. The committee discussed the state board position statements, the standard setting process for mathematics and alternate mathematics, and validation of English Language Arts ELA 2023 assessment results, the development of a professional learning system for evidence-based reading instruction, the approval of early childhood education programs operated by school districts and educational service units, and the approval of Rule 11 waiver request from Fairbury Public Schools. The committee received an annual progress update on the Asante Elementary, Middle, and High School Priority School Progress Plans from Asante Community Schools team members. The school team also presented to the full board during yesterday's work session, where they answered questions related to addressing chronic absenteeism in middle school, attracting certified teachers, and the relationship with the tribal council. The committee received an update on the 2024 legislative session and potential implications for Planning and Evaluation Committee, the approval of educator preparation programs, the statutory requirements, timelines, and proposed processes for awarding Innovative Learning Platform Grant, the statewide assessment system procurement, the revised proposed model policy for the dress code and grooming for schools in accordance with Section 79-2, 159, and the Dyslexia Research Grant Program. This concludes the Planning and Evaluation Report.
Are there any questions on the Planning and Evaluation Committee report? Is there a motion on item 7.3.A?
Got it.
Yeah.
Right in front of me.
We have a lot of motions today, so it's 7.3.A.
Yeah, got so many in front of me. All right, so I move, Madam President, to approve the renewal of accreditation for school systems.
I second the motion.
It is moved and seconded to approve the renewal of accreditation for school systems. Is there any discussion on the motion? The motion is to approve the renewal of accreditation for school systems. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Morrison, Neary, Penner,
Yes.
Kojons,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Jones. 5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to approve the renewal of accreditation for school systems is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.3.B?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to adopt the proposed revision to Rule 4.
Why don't you withdraw your motion? That's not the one we want to take up right now. Just say, I withdraw the motion.
We are on item 7.3.B.
I withdraw the motion.
Madam President, I move to approve the renewal of accreditation for educational service units.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the renewal of accreditation for educational service units. Is there any discussion on the motion? The motion is to approve the renewal of accreditation for educational service units. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Neary, Jones, Morrison, Fricky,
Yes.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Kojons.
Yes.
5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to approve the renewal of accreditation for educational service units is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.3.C?
Yes, Madam Chair. Okay, I move to renew the approval of interim program schools for the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
It is moved and seconded to renew the approval of interim program schools for the 2024-2025 school year. Is there any discussion on the motion? The motion is to renew the approval of interim program schools for the 2024-2025 school year. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Morrison, Neary, Penner,
Yes.
Kojons,
Yes.
Goebbels,
Yes.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Fricke,
Yes.
Jones. 5 yes, 3 absent.
The motion is, the affirmative has it, and the motion to renew the approval of interim program schools for the 2024-2025 school year is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.3.d?
Yes. I move to approve new non-public schools.
I second that motion.
Is moved and seconded to approve new non-public schools. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Yes, this is a little bit different than all of the other motions for approval. Those are all annual renewals that we do. This particular motion is for non-public schools that are either new and are seeking approval, and their approval is conditional initially, or it can be for existing non-public schools that are adding perhaps an additional class, but they're making some change in terms of the structure of the school. So we have 3 of those on this list for this year.
Patty, I have a question then. So this is a conditional approval for 1 year. So then do you, or would you rather have me ask a staff member, then what happens after that?
You could ask a staff member.
Okay. And let's see, that would be Mr. Jean-Baptiste or Brad Dirksen, one of them?
Yeah.
Good morning, Dr. Deco Jean-Baptiste, Director of Accreditation.
So do you want me to repeat my question?
No, if I understand your question correctly, it's what takes place after the conditional approval, which is a very fair question. What will take place is, well, let me back up a little bit. Each new school that's applying for non-public approval has a compliance visit, an initial compliance visit. Once the board gives them conditional approval, they'll conditionally approve for 1 year, and then someone from the accreditation team will make a secondary compliance visit to make sure they are meeting all compliance areas within Rule 14.
And then at that time, if they are meeting it, then they would have not a conditional approval?
No, they would appear on next year's list for approval of non-public schools.
All right, thank you.
So their conditional status lasts for 1 year if they're meeting all compliance.
Okay, great. And I want to apologize for calling you Mr. instead of Doctor.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Deco, would you just explain a little bit about the Alleluia Kindergarten, because that was a little bit different situation than I've seen before?
So with Alleluia, it is a school that typically recruits kindergartners, and if they're not able to recruit enough kindergartners, then they won't be able to have that grade level for that year. So they put in an application just to make sure that they're eligible to be approved to teach kindergarten for that school year.
Okay, thank you. See, we have no further questions. Thank you. The motion is to approve new non-public schools. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Penner,
Yes.
Jones, Fricky,
Yes.
Murray, Goebbels,
Yes.
Morrison, Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Kojons.
Yes.
5 yes, 3 absent.
We are on agenda item 7.3.E. This is a discussion item. Discuss the state board position statements. Board members, are there any questions or discussion on this item?
Yes. During our planning and evaluation committee meeting yesterday, we talked a little bit about what are next steps. We have one position statement, 3, the early literacy position statement that, as you recall, was revised and we approved that revision. But we have 6 other position statements that have expired. Some of them from as long ago as 2021. So we were talking about, so what do we do with these expired position statements? What we recommended in our committee, and that's why we wanted some discussion with the rest of you as board members, we recommended that these position statements go back to the appropriate staff member for them to review and to propose revisions. Because all of these, from our standpoint, were still and are still relevant position statements, but we also recognize that they're somewhat outdated, some more than others. I mean, even when you look at the term digital education, that's a rather archaic term, even though this expired not that many years ago. So we want to make sure that the position statements really reflect the accuracy of the times and also continue to reflect what we are saying that we value in terms of positions on these particular areas. So the plan is, depending upon what you as board members think, but the plan would be then for staff to bring those proposed revisions back to Planning and Evaluation Committee. The process that was used for the early literacy revisions seemed to work really well. And so what we're trying to do is mirror that process. Those proposed revisions would come back to our committee at our next meeting for committee members to provide some input. Maybe we see something that could be reordered in the position statement to make it clear, or perhaps there are some terms or ideas that we think need to be included, you know, just those kinds of things. And if there are revisions to the proposed revisions, then staff would take those back, and then those proposed overall revisions would come to the board for board approval. So it would probably be September before they would be coming to the board.
Patty, can I ask you a question? Sure. So we as a board have been discussing in our work sessions, we've been discussing legislative priorities. We've been discussing, do we have standing positions? Let's look at the strategic plan. And now we have position statements. And I'm wondering if it would be maybe a consensus of the committee that perhaps somehow, if we have position statements and then we decide to develop standing positions, I mean, it seems like we're duplicating things. I would like your perspective on those items and if we could somehow combine things.
I would say that standing positions and position statements, as the way we define position statements, are one and the same.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
Do any other board members have any questions or comments? Lisa?
What I liked about the discussion yesterday, when we broke into 2 different groups, that we came back together, we were all pretty much on the same page. And I appreciate that we're trying to make them more succinct and apropos to the times right now. So I appreciate all the work that was done at the leadership of the commissioner.
Patsy?
Well, we've heard several times today how important words are, and so the other part of that is updating the language that I think would be really important.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, Kirk.
So what we've talked about a little bit yesterday in a work session is that our standing positions would come out of our legislative priorities. So are these relevant are these still relevant?
Yeah, I guess how I would explain this, Kirk, is whether you call it a standing position or a position statement, they really kind of tell us this is what we value, or this is our position on something, right? Now, if you have legislative priorities that are totally inconsistent with your position statements, then you have an issue, right? But I see them as kind of being your overriding guide. Now, you might not, every year you're not going to have legislative priorities that address all of your position statements. If you had resolutions, I shouldn't even bring that up because that will just muddy the water, okay? So I won't talk about resolutions. But I think when we, at our last board meeting, we were trying to make connections between positions statements and our legislative priorities, and it just got really messy. So really, I don't know. I mean, certainly our position statements need to be part of our strategic plan, right? And they need to be, if we have guiding principles, they need to be consistent, or maybe they replace guiding principles. That will be determined. But the thing I would say is if you have a legislative priority and it's contrary to what your position statement is, then you have to come to terms with that. But we don't have that, right? I mean, the things that we talked about yesterday they're consistent with our position statements.
Madam President? Well, Kirk has,
Oh, go ahead.
So so what is your recommendation as the Planning Evaluation Committee? Because as Patsy said and Scott Phillips said, words mean things, and I think there's some definitions that NDE or the state board hasn't defined, and there's some things that need to be defined and can be defined many different ways, but how does the State Board of Education define, for instance, equity? What's the definition of it? And you can get two totally different definitions from two highly respected individuals. We're talking about quality of outcome, which is that where we're at? Because that's impossible, whether it's opportunity to insert that instead of equity. So there's a lot of different things that maybe I could just talk to the planning evaluation, the chair of the planning evaluation committee, to just kind of give that some thought as you're going through the standing positions, or position statements?
Yeah, and I think, this is not the full body of the position statements. This is just looking at the ones that have expired. So we're not even talking about, at this point, the ones that are still active, I would say. Call them active. They haven't expired. There is a system, and I understand that system is Lane Carr. Those are the words of the commissioner. That Lane will be responsible for kind of keeping track of the expiration dates for those additional position statements. So as each of those come up, because I think there are some of those that are more in line with what you're talking about in terms of equity and so on. Okay.
So I just need to understand. These positions, I do know that these were written, by previous iterations of this board, but it's coming through the Planning Evaluation Committee, and these essentially, you said standing position statements and standing positions in your mind, and to me, I agree. They're one and the same. And my question is, are we limiting things by having them come through one committee rather than through a full board, I hate to say it, work session?
These were directed to Planning and Evaluation Committee because the majority of them Quest, expanded learning opportunities, coordinated student health, digital education, assessment of learning are all topics that that committee is responsible for. The one perhaps that would not fit as neatly there is position statement 1, and that's a non-discrimination statement. So, I mean, that's why they came, because those were content, quote, content areas, just like the early literacy came to us, because we deal with the content.
Right.
But that's, you know, as a president.
I just don't want him to get so far down the road and then the 4 other members who aren't on that committee.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, thanks for answering my questions.
Sure.
And then I'm gonna go to Lisa.
Just one thing that came out yesterday during the work session that I think is important, having been on the executive committee last year, that I don't know who said it, I'd love to give credit to you, but what was said was that these, whatever you want to call them, position statements, by narrowing the focus like we did yesterday, will actually help the executive committee decide how to support or not support the bills. I hadn't even thought about that. And having been on that committee, I think the focus and delineating what you need to be looking at as position statements will help the executive committee in setting priorities. So whoever said that yesterday, thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 7.3.f. This is a discussion item, standard setting processes for mathematics and alternate mathematics and validation of English Language Arts, ELA 2023 assessment results. Board members, are there any questions or discussion on this item?
Just a little background, I guess, or explanation of this is, as you recall, last year, we had the standard setting process for ELA and alternative ELA and validation for science. So this is the same kind of process as Trudy Clark explained. They really were happy with the processes that were used. And so the processes will be the same, but the content areas are different, right? Because this year it's for the mathematics and alternate mathematics and then validation of ELA.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Agenda item 7.3.g, discussion item, professional learning system for evidence-based reading instruction. Board members, are there any questions or discussion on this item? Patty?
I think it would be beneficial, Allison, if you wouldn't mind coming forward to talk about this a little bit. Thank you. Could you just explain what is the professional learning system for evidence-based reading instruction?
Yes, Allison Denbesti, Academic Officer. The most recent legislative session passed a bill, LB 1284. One of the components of that bill requires the NDE to develop and implement a professional learning system in evidence-based reading instruction. And the target audience is teachers who teach children ages 4 through 3rd grade. And so we are at work designing that professional learning system. It is based on tenets that are embedded in the statute, as well as what we know to be best practice, including the implementation of high-quality core instruction, using high-quality instructional materials, developing regional literacy coaches that will be deployed to support teachers as they are implementing new learning that may come from evidence-based reading instruction. One of the things that we plan to embed in the plan is choice for districts. There isn't a particular program or course that they have to take, but rather just know that we want teachers to be firmly grounded in what has been demonstrated to be effective methods of teaching children to learn to read.
I'm really excited about this. I've been trying to get us to work toward this for a couple of years because this really provides us with a statewide system related to especially early literacy development. And that's important. You know, I really appreciate the flexibility that there are options so that individuals can choose different options. That helps people not feel so much like things are being imposed on them. And also, as you mentioned yesterday, we have a number of teachers who've already completed the letters training, right? So there's no sense in having someone go through something that they've already accomplished. So I'm just really, really excited to see how this is implemented and know that it will be very impactful in terms of literacy.
So I have a little question because you said you weren't going to prescribe particular methods, but you did say that they needed to be firmly grounded in proven methods. So what is the determining factor in that? Can you explain that?
What the wording of the legislature requires is evidence-based reading instruction. There are several different options. One that's been mentioned is letters. Another one, UNL has a project, Words, that is currently taking place, I think, in about 17 sites across the state. And part of our planning involves seeking additional options. We do want to seek out, if needed, we will develop a rubric to evaluate proposed options to ensure that they are in fact grounded in evidence. Some of the resources that we tend to rely on, the What Works Clearinghouse, things like that, that really will evaluate the evidence for those programs.
I have another question, and I'm sorry, guys. I just have a few. I'm really excited about this. So one thing that so Sherry Jones and I, we went last fall to an education conference, and one thing that some states are doing is adding an additional, it's not an endorsement, but it's like a seal or recognition of teachers who have undergone this kind of reading instruction. And I wondered if there's any talk in the department about doing that to acknowledge those efforts and also to set those teachers apart for the systems, and if they're trying to move between school districts so people know that they have this training.
Mm-hmm. There is currently a reading endorsement available. One of the options that we're evaluating now is a course out of the University of Nebraska at Omaha that once teachers complete this course, they have the option to either receive a stipend or to receive 3 hours of graduate credit, which can be used toward a reading endorsement. We have been working with Brad Dirkson's office to look at the endorsements which are available, and at this time we really feel that the existing reading endorsement is sufficient to honor the additional training that teachers who go through reading programs receive, rather than fragment into specific things that we just feel the reading endorsement is best served to meet the needs of students who require additional support.
Can I jump in on that one?
Yes.
Since I'm already lit up. There's also a micro-credential, I believe, or a badge of some sort that Ryan Rickenbaugh from the Department of Education and Tammy Williams from UNO are working on that wouldn't require us to recognize it as an endorsement or a certificate, but it's something you could certainly put on a resume to show advanced study in a specific area.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Maher. That's what I was wondering, if there was some.
Glad I jumped in.
I am. Sometimes I let him. Any other questions, comments? And then I do know you might have a few more things. Yeah, Kirk.
So letters, I'm unfamiliar with this. these are the methods that you're going to use to teach children, or are these the classes that teach the teachers how to teach?
That's a great question.
Because sometimes we've got some school districts that science of reading and phonics, and they're doing wonderful, and some are not, and we've kind of gotten away from some of that, and our test scores aren't the greatest, and so at times in the reading. So is that included in this? Am I off base with this? Are we trying to reinvent the wheel, or are we going to go back to what worked years ago?
So if I could repeat your question just to make sure that I understand what's being asked. You're asking letters, for example, is that designed to teach children or to teach teachers? Letters is a program, it's a professional development program, so teachers would go through that. And specific to the wording in the legislation, it is evidence-based reading instruction. You referenced science of reading. Science of reading is really it's made up of 5 very specific components. That's what we want to see in classrooms. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think Dr. Maher had one more, or Lisa, do you have something?
I forgot my question.
Okay. Well, we'll let the commission.
But I want to thank everybody that made this possible. I'm excited about what we're promoting for teachers and students in reading. And I'm also looking forward to the secondary reading, because some students we don't have in our system, they come and they're at different places, and they kind of get through elementary, middle school without what they need for reading. So I'm along with everybody else. This is good for kids.
Well, thanks. I just want to probably emphasize and reiterate many things that Allison has said. One of the very first things I heard from this board a year ago, and President Goebbels at the time, was really let's get a handle on early literacy, all literacy, but early literacy. And there was a push there as I began the position. I would tell you that push was continued through legislative action this year. And I thought it was very interesting when you think about our nonpartisan unicameral, that we had Senator Linehan and Senator Walz really leading an effort in this particular area that ended up being a $1.8 million plus appropriation for this specific topic. I would tell you, along the time of that coming to fruition in the legislature, Dr. Friesen and I were approached from the philanthropic community about what is your plan and what can we do to help. When I think about a reappropriating internally of ESSER funds, when I think about a $1.8 million appropriation from our legislature, and I think about the potential that we have in the philanthropic community right here in Nebraska, resources aren't going to be our issue for turning this literacy beast around. The legislature stopped short of saying the science of reading needs to be the basis of what you're doing, and it morphed into evidence-based. But I would tell you the science of reading is part and parcel to what we're doing when we think about how do we move forward in this literacy space. I have had, in many ways, I would say a charmed first year in this position, thanks to this board and thanks to the staff that we have. But nothing excites me more about the difference we can make in literacy assessment, in student outcomes as they relate to literacy going forward. We have a lot of balls in the air that we're juggling right now, through Allison Denbesti, through Amy Rohn, through Dr. Friesen, and I should stop because there are a whole lot of people that we're working on putting that plan together, and there's a lot there right now. I could share, but I would say likely at our August meeting, you'll begin to see what shape this takes like. And we're working with school districts as well as all of those groups that we're talking about right now. So I just wanted to say that we're not sitting around wondering what we're going to do in this space. In fact, I would say probably most of the people over there are wondering, what's he thinking about next? Because we're moving and we're really beginning to put a direction together in this particular area. I'm excited, and I think you'll be excited and happy really soon. Thanks.
Lisa, and then Patty.
I remembered my question, and it can be answered later, but I want to say it out loud, and I'm going to write it down. But in the planning of this, what we're passing potentially today, will ESUs be kind of a base involved in that?
ESUs are very much right at the center of it. In fact, the $1.8 million plus, I don't remember the decimal points after the 0.8, appropriation is it actually talks about ESUs and the Department of Education. So internally, what I talk about is there's a dance that is going to need to take place between the ESUs and the Department of Education to figure out how that is fully funded. I would take that a step further and say, even if that wasn't mentioned in that particular bill, I don't know how we would be able to accomplish anything of significance in this area without working directly with our educational service units. They've proven to be great partners to the department and to me.
And just for clarification, we're not voting on this today. This is just discussion. Yep. Patty?
Yes, I was just going to say that, I'm so appreciative that we have started with working on literacy. And to me, literacy is a beginning point. It's not an ending, because when you think about it, reading really is foundational. And we talked about those 5 areas, comprehension and vocabulary. If you come to understand how to comprehend, it's not just going to help you read. It's going to help in other content areas as well. The same thing with vocabulary. So I'm just going to be quiet because I am so excited about this. I could go.
So as we wrap up the discussion, just reiterating the thankfulness that we have to our staff for the reallocation of funds and the focus of this. I think as board members, we're very privileged to get to be a part of this, and we're excited. So thank you all for your hard work. All right, we are moving on to agenda item 7.3.H. This is a discussion item. Discuss approval of early childhood education programs operated by school districts and educational service units. Board members, are there any questions or discussion on this item?
I would just say that this is a pretty standard item in the respect that we do approve the early childhood education programs that are operated by districts and ESUs. So this is something that we do on a regular basis. So it was just the starting point for us in committee to just kind of have that on alert that this will be coming forward as an action item.
I would just like to comment too on these programs that in our rules committee, we're having discussions about Rule 11 and some revisions. So I think that these have been a big focus for everyone. Also, board members, there is a PowerPoint in Spark. If you would like to review that again, that will be there. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, just in regard to the PowerPoint, that's really, Melody provided that for all of us for background information about the kinds of supports that are provided to these programs.
Seeing no further discussion, I'm going to move on to agenda item 7.1.I. This is also a discussion item. And the discussion is to approve Rule 11 teacher waiver request from Fairbury Public Schools. Board members, any questions or discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item 7.4, Rules and Regulations Committee. Chair Lisa Fricke will report on behalf of the Rules and Regulations Committee meeting.
Thank you, Madam President. We met yesterday with me as chair, Elizabeth Tegmeyer and Kirk Penner, and we reviewed the rules report. And like I said earlier, lots of bills or lots of things were signed by the governor, and we were very appreciative of that. The public hearing was held on June 3rd for revisions of Rule 4 and 28 and the repeal of Rule 29. NDE staff shared the hearing summary and testimony. The committee, having no concerns, recommends approval for all 3 rule actions today. NDE staff recommended the content tests and passing scores for endorsements. The specification of passing scores was removed from the recently signed Rule 24, and this was done to allow scores to be updated in a timelier manner. The committee recommends approval of the content tests and passing scores for endorsements that are on Spark. NDE staff provided information from the 2024 legislative session and the implications for the Rules and Regulations Committee. NDE staff provided information on proposed revisions to Rule 11, which streamline waiver requests and respond to recent legislation as well. NDE staff provided information on proposed revisions to Rule 51 to address shortages of qualified sign language teachers and interpreters and allow candidates more flexibility. The committee recommended proceeding with the hearing before the August 24th meeting. NDE staff provided information on the proposed repeal of Rule 22 in response to legislation which repealed statutes for the Master Teacher Program. The committee recommended proceeding with the hearing before the August 24th meeting. NDE staff provided information on the repeal of Rule 26 in response to repealed legislation. The committee recommended proceeding with the hearing before the August 2024 meeting. If the rule is repealed, the board will need to adopt guidance for local mentoring programs. So the mentoring idea won't go away. And I wanted to just point out how many times in my report I mentioned staff. They are the rock that brings the information to us to make better and more informed decisions, and we appreciate you. And that concludes my report, Madam President.
Are there any questions or comments on the Rules and Regulations Committee report? Okay. Is there a motion on item 7.4.b?
Yes, Madam Chair, there is. I move to adopt the proposed revisions to Rule 4.
I second the motion.
It's moved and seconded to adopt the proposed revisions to Rule 4. Is there any discussion on the motion?
So we had a good discussion about Rule 4, and there is a little bit of controversy in it by a word, non-sectarian textbooks. And I spoke with Tom Benzer with the Catholic Conference. I think it's important to read his testimony. And I've already talked to Brian about it, so he's aware of my thoughts here. But his testimony, and I'll read it at the hearing, said they were supportive of the rule and appreciated the time and effort spent by developing the new rule. However, they had one reservation regarding section 005.05. Specifically, the section specifies that designated agent can only make a request for non-sectarian textbooks. Mr. Venzer stated that this language is not in statute. I think in statute it's any. And also cited U.S. Supreme Court, and I think Brian should probably come up here if that's okay and kind of give what he told us. Supreme Court, Carson versus Macon, where the court said that the use of non-sectarian language violates the First Amendment. Mr. Venzer asked for this language to be removed, but otherwise was grateful and thankful, which I know he was. I talked to him this morning as well. and thankful for the changes in the rule. So there is a concern that this rule, as is, with non-sectarian in it, will go to the AG's office and be sent back because that was not in the original language of the statute. And for that reason, if we just take it out, that would be good, and we would be rolling with this rule. But if you're okay, President, Brian, do you want to explain your knowledge?
Deputy Commissioner Halstead, would you come?
While he's coming up, I'm glad that you brought that up, Kirk, because Brian has an excellent reasoning why it needs to stay.
Good morning, Brian Halstead, Deputy Commissioner. Mr. Venzer did, in fact, raise that point at the hearing. He had also shared that with staff when he saw the hearing draft was out there, so it wasn't unexpected that he might raise that issue. The U.S. Supreme Court case that he cited, though, was about the state of Maine, I believe, that told a religious organization that they couldn't participate in a state program because they were a religious organization, and that would violate the U.S. Constitution in that regard. And this program actually is specific to private denominational and parochial schools. What the legislature changed was, in that law, it's no longer the school districts doing the work of providing textbooks to the parents of children who are attending the private denominational parochial schools in that school district. And the current law that's still in place for this upcoming school year is not a public school district can't purchase sectarian materials. And our Constitution still includes language that says, even if it's in that, non-sectarian is what's the focus. I understand Mr. Venzer's point. We did not see that word as limiting any non-public school from buying any textbooks in social studies, mathematics, English, science, physical education, what you require either in Rule 14 as instruction or in Rule 10 for instruction, or what the legislature has stated in statute that all schools, including private denominational parochial schools, should be teaching their kids. So I appreciate his raising the issue, and it's up to the board whether they want to leave it in or not. Obviously, if the Attorney General's office raises issues with that word, we're going to comply with whatever the Attorney General's office tells us to do. And if taking the word out is a non-substantive change, fine. If it's not, then we'll have to go back out for another hearing without that word in the rule. So anyway, the context, it wasn't a surprise to anyone on that, and I appreciate Mr. Venzer at least raising it. So,
Deputy Commissioner, I do have a question. So the textbook purchase program, and I wish I would have thought of this yesterday to ask in committee, but the textbook purchase program only applies to textbooks that are for courses required by the state, correct?
that is how we have read the statutes and how we currently still read the statutes as to, these are approved and accredited non-public schools. So this does not apply to any school that is exempt from approval or accreditation requirements. So there's nothing going on in that world. So logically, one would presume the instruction that the legislature says every school should be offering, and what this board has said every school that's approved or accredited is offering, are the, quote, textbooks you'd be using to instruct the children. They do have, with the state now, us, the department, running this for the 25-26 school year. They're not limited to the public school district and what that public school district is using there for the textbook, so that it broadens the availability of all of that.
So what I need to boil this down to my, I still feel a little confused. So the only textbooks that would be used and be able to be purchased or purchased by the department and loaned to the non-public schools, the approved and accredited non-public schools, the only textbooks would be in the subject areas that we as a state require them to teach.
That is our understanding of the law
So
and how
it
this
would-
applies,
so,
yes.
I mean, so it would be math books and English and history and science. Those are the only ones that they would even be permitted to request.
That is our understanding of the statutes and what the legislature has provided, yes.
So the term non-sectarian is indicating religious books. If they want sectarian, so we're saying non-religious books. But what if Pius here in Lincoln wants to purchase a Catholic science textbook produced by a Catholic? That's my concern with that word in there. There's Catholic publishers that produce curriculum. The science textbook would fall under that. It's a required course, but with the word non-sectarian, are they now, I think that word could then be used to prohibit them from purchasing from the Catholic publisher.
That is not how the department is reading that. If it's a textbook on science, it does not matter who publishes the textbook. It does have to be for science and whatever is the required instruction in science. However, that's been defined by the legislature, the board, in the approval or accreditation. But the publisher of the book or the textbook or the instructional material is irrelevant to that.
I think
This would prohibit the state of Nebraska from buying, and I'm not trying to pick on, the King James Bible for a non-public school to use in that setting for whatever religious instruction that school is providing to students. Because from the perspective of how we understand the state of Nebraska is not in the business of promoting any particular religion, whichever it is or what it involves. That's an individual choice, and that's what any private denominational parochial school can offer in that. But we would not, that would be an example of what you could not use this program for.
But they couldn't use it for that because a religion class is not required by the state.
Correct.
So they couldn't do that anyhow.
Well, it is not required by the state. I can't speak to how every denominational and parochial school operates and everything. I'm cognizant, I believe that in the parochial schools, all children go to mass each day. That's a religious exercise, but we're not in the business of directing the mass or whatever. That's a choice of the school and the parents who enroll them in that school.
Right. And the school would not be able to apply for these funds for any religious coursework to be purchased. I understand that. I'm just
Yes.
reiterating what Kirk is saying, that I think that the word non-sectarian could at some point prevent the required course books from being purchased if if we're already not buying books for religion class or Bible class, we're not going to buy those books. We are buying books for the core requirements that the state board requires. And you just said they can purchase them from any publisher. They can request the purchase of them from any publisher. I guess I'm not understanding why that word is necessary in there.
That may be. I guess we were just being straightforward with how it's always been done by leaving the word in there that's already in there for the public school districts, that they can't purchase items unless they're non-sectarian. So it was a use of a common word that has been used throughout the state of Nebraska for education. We didn't think that was a problematic word, but I don't know that I can answer, do you need the word or not?
Elizabeth.
But
So it was, the non-sectarian, just to clarify, wasn't in the statute, it was any. Is that, I know you don't have it in front of you, but I think, again, the argument is, or discussion is why, and we don't need to know why, it's there, so it's there. Non-sectarian was added, it wasn't the legislature that added non-sectarian, correct? It was any book.
I don't recall whether Rule 4 had that word in it, but the statutes already prohibit public school districts from buying materials unless they are non-sectarian. So it was a given. Maybe the word doesn't need to be in there if everybody agrees you can't buy sectarian materials with this. So.
Public schools can't buy religious books. That's in, is that in statute? Or is that an NDE?
Well, I know it's in the Constitution.
Constitution, that's all I need.
It may be somewhere in the statutes.
Okay. My point is, if public schools can't do it, and they're using dollars, we do great work with both public and non-public schools. The training in early childhood, potential things for, there's a rule for it. We do care about our parochial schools, and we have fantastic parochial schools. The point is, why should they be able to, when in the Constitution it says, we can't do it as a public school, but we'll buy books to allow you to do it. And I would not have a problem, social studies, history, when I studied that, we had sections on different world religions. Very interesting. And you learn and you appreciate the people around you of different thoughts. It's not wrong, it's just different. And so to have the private schools to be able to do what the public schools and statutes say you can't do, I think it should stay in.
So just to clarify, the current wording that we have includes this non-sectarian phrase, correct?
Yes.
In Rule 4, it does say that they can request non-sectarian textbooks be purchased. The designated agent, which is the non-public schools whose parents have authorized one person, the administrator, to do work for the parent, yes.
And has that been an issue?
We are not aware that that's been an issue in the past.
Okay.
So in the current form, you can purchase non-sectarian. Is that what I heard you say? You can't, I didn't hear the T or the N.
Currently, public school districts cannot purchase sectarian textbooks. That is specifically prohibited by the Constitution and I believe statute, but I can't quote a statute off the top of my head here.
And the private schools couldn't buy books unless they're core curriculum, to Elizabeth's point. The way you read it, I know you're a little bit vague on that.
The way the loan program, we believe, is designed is the state of Nebraska is buying these for the children in those schools to use for the instruction those schools are required to provide to children. So in that regard, you're buying what the legislature and this board has said, these are the instructional areas and this is the textbook or instructional materials you should be using to instruct in the areas that the legislature and you have defined are the areas of instruction, yeah.
I guess another thing that comes to mind for me is the critical change with this adoption program is that we used to designate for schools to purchase for the parochial schools, correct?
It is no longer going to be the duty of each public school district to do that. We, the department, are assigned that responsibility for any of the private denominational and parochial schools whose parents agree when they enroll the child, they want the child to be able to participate in this loan program, yeah.
So my point is, it's not being done now through public schools. Would you explain how that will be done? Are you prepared to do that, or?
Well, how it will be done under the proposed revisions to Rule 4, it will be the Commissioner of Education who is responsible for doing all of this work. The statute and the regulations provide the commissioner may contract with a third-party vendor to do that. And it's very helpful in the state of Nebraska that the educational service units have always had a duty of buying instructional materials for public and non-public schools if the non-publics request it. And since the ESUC already does cooperative purchasing on a large scale for large school purchases, they're a natural third-party vendor who can do this far more effectively and efficiently closer than we at state government level. So we're anticipating the ESUCC being the third-party vendor who will carry out most of this work. There'll still be oversight if this rule is adopted by the commissioner on how the ESUCC does. The rule provides the commissioner will prescribe certain things in that regard. So does that answer your question?
It does, and I guess the point I'm trying to get at is that we will now have, rather than it being public schools, we'll have ESUs or the commission. And I think the clearer the rule can be about what is not allowed, the better it is, so that there's not that kind of confusion of, can we purchase a book for a religion class, right? I mean, if it says non-sectarian, then it's clear that you can't do that.
Elizabeth? So, to Elizabeth's point a little bit, so if I've got a science book that's called Catholic Science Book, you gonna buy it? Because it's gonna be, it's gonna teach science, it's gonna teach everything, but it's not gonna teach evolution. It's not gonna teach any of that.
That would be up to the non-public school if that is a textbook they want to use in their science.
But are they gonna, is the commissioner,
Yes.
whoever, gonna stop it? Because
No.
it says Catholic Science Book.
The publisher and the name on the book are largely irrelevant as to the textbook itself. It could be published by some entity named Catholic or whatever. It's not the publisher. Is it a textbook on science? Yes. It can be purchased under this program as the rule is proposed.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. The motion is to adopt the proposed revisions to Rule 4. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Morrison? Tegmeyer?
No.
Kojons?
Yes.
Neary? Fricky?
Yes.
Jones? Penner?
No.
Goebbels?
Yes.
3 yes, 2 no, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to adopt the proposed revisions to Rule 4 is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.4.c?
Yes, Madam President, I move to adopt the proposed revisions to Rule 28 and the repeal of Rule 29. Second?
I second that.
Thank you.
It is moved and seconded to adopt proposed revisions to Rule 28 and the repeal of Rule 29. Is there any discussion on the motion? The motion is to adopt proposed revisions to Rule 28 and the repeal of Rule 29. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Neary, Goebbels,
Yes.
Morrison, Kojans,
Yes.
Fricky,
Yes.
Penner,
Yes.
Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Jones. 5 yes, 3 absent.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to adopt proposed revisions to Rule 28 and the repeal of Rule 29 is adopted. Is there a motion on item 7.4.d?
Yes, Madam President, I move to approve the content tests and passing scores for endorsements. Second.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
It is moved and seconded to approve the content tests and passing scores for endorsements. Is there any discussion on the motion? The motion is to approve the content tests and passing scores for endorsements. Would the recording secretary please call the roll?
Morrison, Fricky,
Yes.
Jones, Goebbels,
Yes.
Kojans,
Yes.
Neary, Tegmeyer,
Yes.
Penner.
Yes.
5 yes, 3 absent.
The
Madam-
affirmative.
Oh, sorry. After you're finished with that, I just wanted to make a comment. I'm so sorry.
The affirmative has it, and the motion to approve the content tests and passing scores for endorsements is adopted.
And
Let's, maybe additional business for your comment?
I just wanted to thank everybody for the discussion. I think it helps the public watching understand both sides of the issue. And so I appreciated the staff that came up and appreciate the comments that were made. It's kind of a hard decision, and so I appreciated the input from everybody. So.
Thank you. Yeah. Agenda items 9.1 through 9.4, those are information items and written reports for the board. Agenda item 10, the good of the order. This section of the agenda is intended for board members to offer informal observations of the work of the state board. Board members may make brief announcements about attendance at future events for the purpose of informing other board members. No business or motions or suggested actions of the board may be offered at this point in the agenda, nor should board members engage in substantive discussion about other agenda items or introduce new agenda items. Thank you to those who attended in person and who tuned in to the broadcast. The next meetings of the State Board of Education are scheduled for August 1st and 2nd, 2024 in Lincoln, Nebraska. The June 7th, 2024 State Board meeting is adjourned.